This is the Cubs Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Chicago Cubs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Cubs Postcast here on the Locked On Cubs YouTube channel. What a way for the first half of the season to end as the Cubs get the win 4-1, the series victory. Shota Imanaga elite as my camera falls and we figure out this disaster on the fly. Look, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Right now, new customers can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Craig Counsell on the day. We're going to get into all of this here as we fix this live here. Sorry for the YouTube viewers. Craig Counsell gets the job done in the game today as the Shota Imanaga. Shota was fantastic. Back-to-back starts for the Cubs with elite pitching. Matthew Boyd, phenomenal. Shota, just as good. Look, after the 11-0 loss on Friday, this is pretty much picture perfect with how you can describe what you're looking for with the Cubs to come out and respond. 2 starts, 2 phenomenal performances, and now you go into the All-Star break with a series win, your first road series win since early in June against the Washington Nationals, against a very good New York Yankees team, and 2 guys who just pitched the absolute best they could in Boyd and Shota. I mean, it's really hard to say enough of what they did. Again, Boyd the entire season. Shota's obviously been a little more up and down this year, it feels like, in terms of just not having his best stuff. Felt like he did in this one. The Cubs only allowed 2 hits in the game and really are just rolling right now when those 2 guys are often on the mound. So very, very good way to end the All-Star break. So we'll talk more about Shota here in a second. The moves that Craig Counsell made. Again, I'm surprised. I was surprised with the lineup change today. So we'll talk through all that. And after the break today, we'll take a look back at the pre-All-Star break portion of the Cubs season and get your questions in, as we will not have a show then until Friday when they take on the Boston Red Sox. Let's talk more about here with Shota Imanaga. So Shota today ends up going out there, 7 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, only 2 hits allowed and 1 walk. So he's going out there. The control was perfect. I mean, yes, there was some early on hard hit contact, but it shows you again, like this should show the front office, honestly, and the ownership group, specifically more the ownership group of like wanting to spend money on pitching at the All-Star break, what good pitching can do. Boyd and Imanaga showed that they have the stuff for playoffs. Like they can go out there and win you playoff series. If you can add a third guy to that can put up similar performances to this, the Cubs can really be a major factor, in my opinion, in the postseason. We know what the lineup can do, but the pitching still, like the rotation just leaves a lot to be desired right now for the Cubs. So if you can find a way to add a third pitcher to this caliber of what Imanaga and Boyd have been the last 2 games, then you can go to another level, I think, in the postseason, honestly, with this team. Because without the pitching, I don't know what the ceiling is for the Cubs. It's going to be really challenging, honestly, to go deep into the playoffs with just those 2 guys. So if you can add someone, it just adds to it. But Shota, a good rebound start, obviously got hit around in his last start a little bit. He had really good command in this game, was getting the strikeout pitch working, struck out Aaron Judge the 2 times he faced him. So really just a phenomenal performance from him. And then Craig Counsell, like he said before the game yesterday, that against lefties, Nico Hoerner was going to be the leadoff man going forward in those games. Okay, so that's all he says. That's all he tells the media. That's all he tells Marquee, is that's what's happening versus lefties. So, surprise, surprise, we see the lineup card drop on Twitter today, and Michael Busch is leading off for the Chicago Cubs, and Ian Happ is batting 6th, and Dansby Swanson is batting 7th. Awesome. And it paid off immediately, both these moves for Craig Counsell. Nico does it immediate with a leadoff triple. Michael Busch, leadoff home run. But you also got major production from Ian Happ and Dansby Swanson where they were batting in the lineup. Dansby, multiple hard hit balls today. The home run that made it, that gave you a lead, the 2-run home run, though that extended your lead. But having Michael Busch and Nico at the top pays off. Ian Happ, another hit today, moved down in the order. Dansby, big hits down in the order. And where has Dansby Swanson had his most success this year? When he was batting 8th. Like, we all knew it. We all saw it. And the Cubs moved him back up in the order. But if you have Nico or Michael Busch leading off, I love this idea with Michael Busch as the leadoff. Look, it's not just because he's a first baseman, but it reminds me so much of Rizzo when Rizzo was leading off at times. I think this would be a great move going forward for the Cubs to have Nico versus lefty, Busch versus righties. That to me feels like a huge, huge W for Craig Counsell if that's the decision he makes going forward. And honestly, when you think about like what it means for the other guys. All right, today's show is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there before, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. We've all been there before, right? You want to buy concert tickets, you get in these long queues, you're in there forever, you're waiting, you get to the front and there's no tickets left, or you're just in there for hours waiting for things to happen. So now you can take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we are good to go now here for the rest of the show, I believe. Joe George here with you on all social media platforms at Joe George Radio. Cliff says DFA Joe. Look, you know what, Cliff? Fair after what just happened with my camera. Maybe DFA the camera, not me itself. All right, so the Cubs first half of the season, they are pending the result of the Dodgers game today. Will either be a half game with ahead of the Dodgers or just a half game behind the Dodgers with the best record or second best record in the National League. They will have a one-game lead. It looks like the Brewers game is still going on as we're live here. A one-game lead on the Milwaukee Brewers in the division. And you've done all this without Justin Steele, with Shota Imanaga missing a large chunk of time and at times not pitching at his best. Porter Hodge has obviously been out a ton this year and not pitched well, when he returned. Miguel Amaya's been out for most of the season. He'll be back. We found out today. They said at some point in the end of July towards the All-Star break. We know that Javier Assad has not pitched for the Cubs. The plan is for him to be back in early August, they said. So all these things happen. All the injuries, new guys in the lineup. And what do you see? Oh, and a third base, like black hole, basically, the entire season. Like besides a couple games here and there with Matt Shaw, black hole at third base. But you finished the first half of the season, or the pre-All-Star break half of the season, in first place in your division oh my gosh, this is a mess. First half All-Star break part of the season, all this stuff. This is one of the funniest shows I've ever done in my life. So we are just going to do this, and we're just going to hold it for the rest of the show today. Look, you see what the Cubs have done. It's been fantastic. And I know there are frustrating moments, but if you just look through again, all the injuries that have happened, all the stuff that has gone right and wrong for this team, I consider this pre-All-Star break part of the Cubs season a huge, huge success. Like I just went over, the injuries, all that's happened, the inconsistencies. Think about where the bullpen was at the start of the season versus where it finished, okay? When it started, I had this note on the top of my Google Doc that said the Cubs bullpen had given up 8 earned runs or more 5 different times. 5 different times. Like, think about that, where they had been early in the season and where they are now, where you've had elite performances time and time again from this team going out there and shutting guys down. Daniel Palencia has come in and filled the closer role absolutely phenomenally for this team. See, Mark says Joe has the yips. My camera has the yips. This isn't my fault. I bought a faulty camera apparently with a stand. But everything that could have gone wrong, I think in terms of injuries has. Even Happ. I forgot Ian Happ as well. So you've seen all these different things that have happened this year. And then you think about the positives. Pete Crow-Armstrong is number 1 in the National League in WAR. He's number 2 in all of baseball in WAR, only behind Aaron Judge. What we've seen from PCA, he's second in FanDuel odds for MVP right now. That's a large margin, between him and Shohei Ohtani for who's going to finish at the top of the MVP race in the National League. But you look at what this team has accomplished, and my point to this, honestly, is just of all the bad vibes there are at times in baseball, especially like you think back to Friday and where this team is at now, they have accomplished so much. This is a huge, huge victory for the Cubs to be where they're at, but there's more that needs to be done. Again, Rojo says here in the chat, Dansby batting 7th is a real thing. I think that's part of it. I think that when the All-Star break comes back out, don't put Ian Happ back in the leadoff spot right away. Go out there, let him earn his spot back by being at the bottom of the order, work his way back up. Nico Hoerner, Michael Busch at the top of the lineup. I think that's the way the Cubs should handle this going forward. Let him earn his spot back to the top. And if it works out with Nico and Busch, then just keep it that way. Don't make changes that aren't necessary. I think that's the way for the Cubs to handle this. And then you have the trade deadline, right? The deadline's coming up here, whether it's Keller, who I know a lot of people like, who's having a good day today. One of the guys from Miami that's out there makes a lot of sense. Adding the third base bat would be obviously, I think, important. I do think that the story from this weekend that kind of feels like overshadowed a little bit by what we saw from the pitching staff from Boyd and Imanaga and what we saw with the lineup changes that kind of gets left in all of this is that Matt Shaw hasn't been on the field until he came in as a defensive replacement for Brujan there later in the game. That to me does feel like a clear signal to the front office, from the front office, that you have to make a third base change. I think you have to. Now, I don't want to see Matt Shaw be traded. I want to see Matt Shaw be sent back down to the minor leagues. I think that's the right decision to make for him, for the long-term future of the Cubs. Like, I wouldn't bail on him yet, but I do think, looking at where the Cubs are at today and seeing how it's gone with Shaw and Birdie and Gage Workman and Vidal Brujan and all these different guys, Justin Turner, I guess, technically throw in the mix too. All those guys that you've seen play third base this year, that adding a third baseman at the deadline is absolutely the right decision for the Cubs to make. So if you make that move, if you add a starting pitcher, it just adds to what this team can do this year. Because again, this first pre-All-Star break part of the season is a huge, huge victory for the Cubs organization. And if you're going to go all in, my only hope is, if you go all in, is not to just completely blow it up in terms of your minor league system for guys that don't have control. Like Owen Cassidy, like trading him for a guy as a rental, I think would be a huge mistake, to be honest. I would really like to see the Cubs only trade him for a guy like Edward Cabrera, who's under control for multiple years for the Cubs. Or if it's a third baseman to replace Matt Shaw for a couple of years, I think that's the move. All right, your questions and comments here as we do one of the funniest shows I've ever done. Because 404 Error says here, Joe, do you think you'll add a camera stand before the deadline? Yes, I got a new camera. Apparently now I need a stand. It worked really great, and then it struggled as much as possible on today's show, our final one before the All-Star break. At least I have 4 days to figure this thing out. Willie Castro brought up a lot here, or a couple times here in the chat. That'd be an interesting move for sure. And something we hit on yesterday. There's a question about, will we see a new player be on the Cubs on Friday? Again, I'm gonna say no. I don't think we'll see the Cubs add someone in terms of having them here in the clubhouse by Friday to this team for the Red Sox series. Mainly because the draft is tonight, or maybe it's tomorrow, or it was yesterday, depending on when you're listening to the show or watching the show. I think that, we'll have to wait a couple days past the start of the second half of the season before you really start getting trade talks. Like, they're starting to heat up, but like, they're not really going just yet. So I think we'll see a move before the deadline, like a week before the deadline, and then maybe the big splash before, right as the deadline is ticking there on the 31st. But Shota, Boyd, Craig Counsell, great moves, great pitching for the Chicago Cubs to win this series against the New York Yankees, to get your first road series win since early June, to beat a team that's an actual contender for the World Series this year. Something that the Cubs fans, I know, feel like they don't do enough of. You beat lefties, you beat a contender, you won a road series. From Friday night to where you are now, much, much better vibes for the Cubs right now. I'm going to have to end the show here because my arm is going to fall off if I keep holding the camera like this. So thank you guys for watching and dealing with my disaster camera on this show. The first half of the season has been awesome. I've loved doing these postcast shows with you guys live here on YouTube. Also, the people that listen on anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Thank you for hanging out with us here as well. You can find me on all social media platforms at Joe George Radio. We will talk to you on Friday after game 1 of their series versus the Red Sox. Thanks for watching. Peace.